23 years old. He'll be 24 in November. I would classify him as a wing. He's 6'5", 6'6". He can play the 2. He can play the 3. Offensively, I really like him as a transition player because of his anticipation, his speed, his athleticism. He gets up and down the court with ease. The first thing that I posted when the report was released was basically saying, at the very least, you will get a guy that's an impact player in transition. So that's not the only thing that you're getting from him, but like that's the thing that sticks out to me the most. And when you look at some of the on-off stats with him in Dallas over the last 3 to 4 years, the team pushed the pace at a higher frequency when he was out on the court. They scored more points per transition possession when he was out on the court compared to when he was off the court. And so when you look at the steals, you look at the live rebounds, Charles Lee has already stated that he wants to push the pace, which is not something really I associated with Boston last year, but definitely with his time in Milwaukee, they wanted to get out in transition. And so you pair Green with a healthy LaMelo Ball, and those two can really connect on these types of plays. Like you can only imagine the way that LaMelo played a couple of years ago with these full court passes, the way that Luka made these full court passes to Josh Green in stride. So Melo has that same skill in his arsenal, and I think that these two will pair well in transition. Green scored 1.3 points per possession in transition, which was a very, very strong number. Now, outside of transition, like I said, this is not the only thing that he's going to offer on the offensive side of the court. You're going to get a guy that wears out the corners. He's going to be a guy that I wouldn't say stands in the corners. He does kind of shift up and down the corners to above the break, but he attempted 2.1 shots on corner threes last year, which places him in the upper tier in the NBA in terms of the attempts from the corners. I do believe he needs to get a little bit better from the corners, get it closer to 41, 42, 43% for him to be fully effective. But overall, like that's what you're going to get out of him on the offensive end. I think one thing that I have noticed just by watching some clips of Green recently is a good thing. Like he's typically always ready to shoot. Just go watch highlights of him. He's in his stance, crouched, and even when he's having to drift or fill to the top of the key, he's ready for the pass. And it's something small, but I think it makes for an easier transition into his shot instead of being so upright. And I think too, because he's so athletic, this helps him with like a pump and go game because he's got the first step. He's already showing signs that he's ready to shoot. So defenders have got to get out there quickly because, he's in position, but then he can turn that readiness and that athleticism into a drive and uses the athleticism to get inside the paint. The final thing that I'll say about his offense is that he needs to find a way, kind of what I was just speaking about, find a way to get into the paint and score at the rim more. Now, it'll partly be how Charles Lee will involve him, and the offense will be tailored towards some other players before they even get to Josh Green, but they need to involve him through cuts. They need to involve him, maybe even as a screener, lob plays, like anything really to use his athleticism to get him scoring at the rim, because I think he's a good finisher there. But he only attempted 2 shots per game last season within the restricted area. And some of those are coming in transition. So he's got to be a little bit more assertive within the half court. And hopefully the coaching staff realizes that and finds ways to get him going downhill and through cuts and maybe through as a screener as well. And also, I don't think I mentioned this yet, but I don't think he's a bad playmaker by any means either. Like I mentioned, he can beat a closeout. So when he is on, the wing or whatever, and guys are closing out and he takes that first step, he can dump it off to the big. Like nothing crazy. Like he's not making these crazy reads, but like he makes the simple reads. And so if he wants to dump it off to Mark Williams in the dunker spot as he's driving the lane. I think he has that in him, and he's more than willing to make that simple play. It's not too complicated for him in terms of his playmaking ability. I think that's something that's a little bit overlooked at times with Josh Green. As far as the other side goes, the defensive end, this is where he will be a big help for Charlotte. The Hornets need defense in the worst way. They need point of attack defenders. And that's been his role with Dallas. And I see no reason why he wouldn't have the same role here in Charlotte. And LaMelo hasn't been that guy that has shown he can, stop penetration at the point of attack. Cody Martin has been unreliable in terms of his health. I think Cody Martin has that in his game, but it's hard to kind of count on him over the past couple of seasons. Brandon Miller, he's not quite there yet. So for Green, if he's starting for Charlotte, which I actually think he should be the starting two guard, I think he would be the perfect point of attack defender to guard opposing ball handlers, guys that like to initiate the offense a lot. And he would be perfect for this team in that specific role. And it also allows, I've said this plenty of times before, it also allows Ball to expend less energy on the defensive end. As odd as that sounds, like that's really a thing. Like I think he expends so much energy on the offensive side because you want the ball in his hands as much as possible. Like take him off the ball, get him into a spot where he's off ball, reading the defense, and let Josh Green be the guy that defends point guards. Other things that I've noticed when it comes to Green's defense, just by watching him play, he's very aware. He's very active. If there's a pass out to the corner and he's somehow in the paint because he had to tag or to help, he just doesn't allow the corner shooter to get off an uncontested look. He puts forth the effort and at least closes out to make it seem like there's a threat of a contest. He's also good around loose balls, around rebounds. And even if he's not getting the rebound, he's just a body up there to try to tip it, to get his finger on it to a teammate. I also think, and this has a lot to do with transition offense as well and why he's so good, he knows exactly when to leak out down the court, and kind of has a feel for when his teammates will grab that rebound, grab that loose ball. And he realizes it's much more beneficial for me to kind of leak out down the court and use my speed and my athleticism and have Luka hit me on a home run ball down the court for an easy layup or a dunk. So not a perfect defender by any means. There's some times where when he's navigating some screens, he takes some wide angles when chasing guys around, which leads to some situations where the opposing team is at an advantage and, he puts himself in a disadvantaged spot. But when I watch him play defense, he's going to compete. And it never feels like he's out of the play. Even if he's a step or two behind, like he's going to try to compete to get back into a position to where he could be a part of the play. And that kind of goes back to what Charles Lee was saying a week ago about having this culture of work, having this culture of competition, competing night in and night out. And whether or not you're the most technically sound player, I think they can handle that part. And that's what I've gathered from Lee and Peterson. If a player has a motor, shows some effort, but they need to clean up some things around the edges, they trust their developmental staff to get things sorted out. And it's much easier to coach that than it is to kind of coach the effort and the motor. So I think that's one thing that sticks out to me just recently with some of the guys that they've been pinpointing. Josh Green, for example, is that same type of high energy, high motor guy that will go after 50-50 balls, that will go out and contest a shot when it feels like, it's going to be an uncontested corner three. So he's very active and mobile and tries to be the best on that end of the court, even though sometimes he might be out of position. So I did have a question here from James Laird in terms of this acquisition. He says, does this give us a clue about how Miller will be deployed for the upcoming season? Will he be deployed primarily as a small forward? I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it felt like Miller almost like 50-50. in terms of shooting guard and small forward. But the question, I do think the answer is yes. I truly believe that Green should be penciled in to start at the 2, Miller to start at the 3. We still have the power forward position still up in the air with Miles Bridges, but I really like Charlotte's 1-2-3. Melo, Green, Miller. It's a good mixture of guys who have a little bit of experience but are still young. They can grow and develop together. They can work off of each other. Their games blend very well together. It's a nice blend of skills. Like you've got balls, drive, and kick game. That pairs well with Green. You have Brandon Miller, who's more of a movement shooter than Green. Green, I feel like, is more of a stationary guy. So when defenses have to shift towards Miller, Green can find those opening gaps on the backside for cuts. He can shift into open space for opportunities thrown his way. And then defensively, it works too. You put ball on some of the lower usage guys. You place Green at the point of attack, as I mentioned earlier. And I don't have too many issues with Miller playing the 3. I think his role, regardless if he's playing the 2 or the 3, will largely stay the same. He just may have to go up against bigger opponents, and we've already known that about him. Like that's one thing that he needs to improve is his just physical strength. And if that's going to be a part of his game moving forward, he's going to have to bulk up. I know that last offseason we heard about the stories about him struggling to put on weight because of the mono situation. But if he wants to withstand contact at both ends of the court, if he wants to play the 3 more often and more effective, he knows this. He knows he's got to get in the weight room and bulk up a little bit. So overall, I think the answer to this question is yes. I think it signals that Miller primarily will be deployed at the small forward, but also just because of the way that you can mix and match rotations and stuff like that, he will see some time at the 2 as well. But overall, thought this trade was an awesome trade for Charlotte. There's really not much risk to it. Like I think that's the biggest thing. Like if things go wrong for Josh Green, and I'm saying that as an if, like his contract is such a movable contract. It's such a reasonable contract. Yes, it's for 3 seasons, but at 8% of the cap, it's really not hampering the Hornets all that much. You got a young player who's going to develop. He's already shown skills in his first 4 seasons here in the NBA that will translate right away over to Charlotte. Obviously, you have to let this play out to see how it goes, but I'd give it a solid A. I really don't know how you could even give it a B because they're not giving up anything in this trade or anything of value. I know I haven't gotten the full details on what the second round picks are, but a second round pick is a second round pick. I mean, it's not anything that is going to hamper the Hornets moving forward.